We got Bank Alpha, we got Engro, we got MCB, and the list just grew and grew and grew. And the business started to become very successful. And it was very strange in Pakistan, probably one of the first online businesses where people were paying real money, real cash, for a product that was service provided through the internet. It was a software as a service. So what happened one day was, as we were doing this, we were only charging the very big clients. We weren't charging the small clients at all. It was completely free. So we had a featured job section where you could post a job. You didn't have to pay anything. We only charged the large employers for this branding. We put a logo. We'd give you value-added services. You could search through CVs inside a database. And then one day we looked at how many jobs were going on Rosie. Thousands and thousands of jobs a month. And we looked at the number of applications. If you post a job on Rosie now, you get, on the average, about 900 applicants. Average salary of a candidate on Rosie is 32,000 rupees. Just did the math. All of these people are putting these jobs, they're hiring, average salary is 32,000 rupees. Why don't we see if we can charge the small employers? The sales team was very nervous. Sir, if you start to charge these little employers, what's going to happen is traffic will drop on the site. It won't be used. Because it's free for them and they can't afford to pay. They don't have the power to pay. They're small. But wohi baat hai na, you do the math. Yeah, look, thousands of jobs being posted, 900 CVs, average salary is 32,000 rupees. People will pay. Why won't they pay me 1,000 rupees if they're able to hire somebody that they're paying a salary of 32,000 rupees? So one day we started to charge, very small amount, 850 rupees to post a job on Rosie. And the sales team was braced for a massive implosion and anger. But we found that the conversion rate was 85%. So we dropped about 15% of the posters, but 85%. And all of a sudden you had a massive amounts of very small jobs being posted for 850. And the growth was fantastic, and we said, okay, so this works, people are interested. So 3 months later I said, let's test the market again. Let's raise the price to 1,500 rupees. Double karte hain isko. Let's see what happens. And the price doubled. And again, a little bit of attrition, but from a revenue perspective, we were growing dramatically. And the traffic we had lost when we did our last price raise of 2,500 rupees all came back eventually. So it was a really interesting study. And that piece of the business now is 50% of the revenue. Aside from the United Nations and Ufone and Warid and the mobile links, the big top 300 clients, now we have 45,000 very, very small clients, and the revenue from them is 50% of the business. And that revenue almost never happened. It happened by accident. Almost by accident. We could have very easily at that point said, "Nay, this is something we shouldn't do," because nobody else has actually charged for this. And people will not pay for it. They did. So, that was a very fine line between success and failure. And a lot of the successes do actually happen by accident. Or phir kya hua ki one day, we got a lot of attention. We were growing. And I ended up with an email in my inbox amidst this growth. And that email read like one of the many spam emails that many of you have seen in your inboxes, promising to transfer $1 billion into your account. So I almost deleted it. I said, this is a hoax, it's a scam. It turned out that there was a very big investment fund in New York City, and the numbers they were quoting weren't hoax numbers, they were very real numbers. But I almost deleted that email. Almost. And if I had, things would have taken another course. So after doing some research, I found out that this was a very credible New York hedge fund. It was very, very real. And I agreed to speak to them. And they said, we've seen your growth in Pakistan. It's a job site. We know the business globally. We're interested in investing. I said, we're not interested in investment. We're growing. We're profitable. Why should I speak to you about investment? And then I thought about it. I said, okay, the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. The best time to raise money is when you don't need it. And I calculated that if we could preemptively spend that money and create sales offices around the country, and if I could spend it in the right way, I could grow the company much faster than if I had organic growth. If we spent it in the right way at the right time. But almost ignored that. And I want to take you back now to when I started working on the internet. Back in 1998, I was in the US, peak of the dot-com boom. I was 28 years old. And at that time, about $1.2 billion of venture capital was invested every single month in a 20 square mile radius of where I live. 1.2 billion US dollars was being invested into startups in a 20 square mile radius of where I live. This is where Hotmail was formed, this is when Google was formed. And everybody I knew was raising huge amounts of money, $10 million, $20 million, $80 million in funding. And the dot-com entrepreneurs were coming from nowhere, starting companies like dogfood.com to amazon.com. उस वक्त ये उधर ही हो रहा था सारा. So I saw a lot of these companies being built. I saw a lot of my friends start these companies and make a lot of money. I saw them lose a lot of money. One day they were worth $1 billion, and the next day they weren't worth anything because the companies went out of business. These were the kind of stories that were happening. But capital was so available that you could start an idea, raise $1 million, $5 million, and the belief was that it didn't matter how much money you made at that time. It didn't matter if you're profitable. You needed to get eyeballs. You needed to get people to use your service, and the money would eventually come. And it didn't matter because if you ran out of the $5 million you just raised, you'd go and raise another $5 million. It was so abundant. And this was kind of the climate that entrepreneurs were operating in the US. Internet was new. Everything would move to the internet. And I started a company, and we raised some money from VCs, investors, and we raised $2 million at that time. And we could have raised $10 million because there was so much investor interest. We didn't. We said, Abhi jo hai na, we'll raise $2 million, we'll grow the business, get more eyeballs, and then we'll raise another $5 million at a valuation that was higher, meaning I would give away a lot less of my stock for the next round because I'd use the $2 million to grow the business. And there was never any doubt that you would raise that next round of funding. So we raised that round of funding, 28 years old. I went to become founder of a company, hired a sales team, hired a product team, got brand new offices, furniture, servers, and life was good. And we created the product, we rolled it out, and one day, about a year later, big smiles on our faces, thinking that we're going to conquer the world and be worth $1 billion, was driving to a meeting in San Francisco, Highway 101, main highway that goes, and my co-founder, the CEO of the company, was with me. We were talking on the way, and we said, how are we doing on cash? He said, oh, we have enough for 3 months, we're about to raise the next round, koi issue nahi hoga. 3 months ke. Acha, but did we account for the salaries of the next month? Nahi, usko phir add karte hain. Acha, but we have money for 2 months. Acha, but did we account for the vacation pay and the lease dues? Nahi, wo nahi. Within about 10 minutes, we realized we had cash for about 2 weeks left in the bank account. And we would not be able to make the payroll at the end of the month. Massive failure, massive. Gave up everything, emotionally very involved in this. And you know, as an entrepreneur, the passion you have for your business, you have a love affair with your business. It's not just, okay, I go here to work. You really are passionate about this business. It's everything to you. And all of a sudden, in those, found out 2 weeks, this was a high-speed train about to run into a wall. And why? Just naive. We just had to plan the cash flows. So in 2 hafton mein we had to figure out kya karenge. We've got a team of people, we've got a product, we've got offices, we've got rent to pay, we have to pay salaries. And we started talking to investors, we started talking to other companies that were interested in maybe doing the same thing. And within 2 weeks, after flying to New York, to Florida, meeting investors, meeting other people that we could merge with or acquire, we went through an acquisition. It was a distress acquisition, and a distress acquisition means that you do an acquisition on terms that are very unfavorable to you, but it's the best option at the time. So we went through a distress acquisition, three days in a boardroom. I remember I was stuck in a boardroom, 3 days. We only left that boardroom to sleep and to use the washroom. Even the food came into the boardroom. Lawyers on both sides. And the amount I learned in those 3 days, going through that acquisition, basically sums up the MBA of, I think, a lot of people. So we went through this acquisition, sold the company, and as a part of the transaction, I was personally liable to stay on for 3 months. So all of the stock was put into an escrow account, and it was tied to how long I stayed with the acquiring company because it was a technology deal. And I was responsible for that piece of the business. So I stayed for exactly 3 months, stock moved out of escrow, and then I began to explore what to do next. But the lesson was, वही जो आपसे मैंने कहा था ना, fine line between success and failure. Had we known we had so little cash flow left, we could easily have raised that next round, and the outcome would have been totally different. There's few inflection points that, if you miss them, or if you avail them at the right time, destinies change. But the lesson was very anti-investment. ये जो investment है ना, it sounds really good when you're young, I'm going to get $1 million and start a business, but it's actually heroin for your business if you don't treat it in the right manner. If you're not mature enough to handle investment, it's like heroin. You get addicted to it, you don't realize the basic business essentials of being cash flow positive, of having a revenue that's driving your business growth. So it was with this frame of mind that I came back to Pakistan and I said, I want to build a profitable business. I've had enough with these VCs. I'm going to build a business from ground up that's profitable, that I can sustain, and I grew, and we did that. I'm very proud of that. So when I got that email saying, we want to invest in your company, my first reaction was, I don't want anybody's money. We're doing well, we're growing, I have my own cash. And then thought about it and said, look, we're a little wiser now. I know the business dynamics. I've tested the market. I know how I can grow. I am 99.9% sure if I spend $50,000 on this activity, I'm going to get $200,000 back. I knew the business dynamics. Confidence was extremely high. So we said, okay, let's try it. So we engaged with this hedge fund. The term sheet is a sheet of paper that the investor gives to you outlining the deal terms. So the term sheet is a very good milestone in the investment process. It means that there's serious intention, talk about how much money they're going to put in, how much of your stock they're going to get. So we had a term sheet. We were excited, started to speak about the term sheet. Very soon, another term sheet came. Nahi, wo jo aapko abhi term sheet di thi, this is another term sheet. The deals turned a lot more unfavorable. Another few months later, we got a third sheet. Deal was turning less favorable. It turned out that hedge fund had another investment in the region that was also doing jobs, and they objected, how can you invest in this company? We're also operating on the ground here in this market. We were here first. So they said, why don't you give your jobs business to that company, and we'll invest in other internet activities you wanted to do. And the underlying principle was, you're based in Pakistan. How many companies have raised VC funding for internet operation in Pakistan before? None. And nobody is crazy enough to invest in your country except for us. So basically, the deal we're giving you is the only deal you're going to get. Leverage. There's no leverage. We didn't want to give up Rosie because Rosie was our engine of growth. Rosie was where the traction was coming from. Rosie was where the impact was being made. And like I told you before, it was a love affair. Don't